is happening in Iran, it's not something like with a click happened, basically. It's been years and years, people struggled among workers' movement, among women's, among 8th of March, 1st of May. It's been years, and this struggle, surprisingly, is continuing, which is great, by the young generation. I should mention that because this young generation, I guess they are brave enough to, even they haven't seen any revolution, but the background is there itself. And naturally, I can say it's in our mentality. So the movement is globally spread widely across the world, and the main thing is shake the government, the Islamic regime, just with as much as surprise us, but I think more than that is shake the base of the Islamic regime, because it started from the death of Mahsa Amini, as I guess you all aware of it. And after that, women leading the street, women overthrowing hijab. And this is not just about hijab. Hijab is just a symbol of oppressive, subordinating, and anti-women and actually apartheid in Iran, anti-women laws. It's under power, and Islamic systematic Islam, that's what is governing and ruling the country. So the impact is more than others. It's on women, obvious, because of the Islamic law. But it doesn't mean it doesn't impact others. This is the class struggle. It's not just women struggling for the right. It started from there. We all know that, but it's not something just people struggle and take the streets and shouting, chanting, and standing in front of that vampire of brutality, vampire of massacre, vampire of torture, vampire of so on and so on. It's been happening, the torture, executions, killing clearly people in the street, the protesters. You can see obvious in the videos publishing around. Thanks to technology and internet, this movement, even with block out the internet, but they find their way. That is less surprising, because the new generation, they are well knowledge by the technology, and they can find their way from here and there. TikTok, Twitter, even gaming, software, everything. And this is great. This is what surprised me most than everything, more than everything. So this is there. But the issue of women uprising, sorry, I have to look at my phone, my head is everywhere. Otherwise, I talk too much, and then because there are a lot to say, as I mentioned. But the nature of the Islamic government, it started from the revolution in 1979, and it was targeting subordination and oppressing women. It started from the first day, like hijab should be compulsory. You should have that hijab, that gender apartheid affects everywhere, in every single level of women's life, like in family, in workplaces. You could see women counted as a second gender, I should say, and this is in every little things, even in salary, which is surprising. People's, women's and workers, women's workers get paid half somehow than men. I'm not defending just women, I'm just mentioning these little things. So they're targeting to subordinate women from the day one, and then 5 years later, people just struggling and fighting back against that rule because they've been hijacking the revolution. People didn't want that. Lefties didn't just uprise for someone from out there, just like suddenly drop down from the sky and rule these people. It was quite modern, it was quite radical, and it is still happening today in the street. And people are, I should mention, universities, workers in different levels, and girls' schools. They're just throwing their hijab and involving in this movement. I, as a young generation, compared to the ones who've seen the previous revolution, I should say I'm hoping for it. I'm hoping to see this revolution, which is quite inspiring, and it just makes me like, oh dear, can we see that, please? But I should say this movement, it's on its own. It has nothing with NATO. It has nothing with Western power. But if even people, Western powers, try to force it, try to hijack it, excuse me, the new generation, I don't think they allow you to go through it. We don't want that. We've seen enough. We've seen more than enough in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Yemen, in every other countries, and it is happening in Ukraine, as you see. Nowadays, we don't want that, and it has nothing to do with Western power and NATO and so on. It's going on its way, and I like to mention that this is a women's revolution train. It's going step by step. If you compare it today with the first day from the beginning, it's massive. It's massive. It's growing every day. The slogans, it's getting more radical. The slogans, the steps and the movement more organized from universities, and it started from the depth of that society. Naturally, mentally, people have been oppressed more than enough, and they deserve to have freedom and equality. That's why they are bravely chanting in the street. Even with those massacres happening, and we don't know exactly how many, we don't know the numbers because, well, the Islamic regime, it is obvious they don't want the truth revealed, but we don't have the exact numbers. But we are sure that those numbers, the people who've been disappeared, the people who've been tortured, the people who've been beaten in the street, the people who've been arrested, they are massively a lot. And this is the situation which make this movement urgently to drag all the attention of it's spread already worldwide, but the thing I mean is to drag the attention of the trade unions, the radical people from abroad. We need this unity. If we want this movement achieve their goal, achieve whatever people demand for it, from the depth of the society, from the depth of all that trauma and pains women's been through for 44 years, if we want to achieve that, and the demand is clearly it's an international demand. It is not for just specific countries or so on. It is an international demand. Women's rights it's an international demand. Workers' rights, it's an international demand. And that is the important thing that makes this unity from across the world to come together stronger. We need to that determination to get organized more. We need to mobilize this movement as much as we can, with specifically with the young generation, because the uprising, revolution, whatsoever you call it, I prefer to call it revolutionary uprising, but I hope so. Whatever you prefer to call that movement, it should go to its goals. The goal is chanting in the street, and it's quite radical. And even we've heard "Long live socialism," and that's great. It means okay, no more king, no more laws. Please leave us alone. We want our freedom and equality, and we can do it, and we can grow it, and we can achieve it, because they have their power. They have the power to drag down the Islamic regime from the basis, from the root, and topple that government forever and put it in the rubbish of the history. We need that to happen, and as much as we can come together as a unity, as much as we get stronger, the movement gets stronger. And this is important to mobilize it in every corner of your community, whoever you are, wherever you belong, just do it and let it happen, because it's not just about Iran. Iran is a regime power in Middle East. If it impacts in Iran, if it's going to impact, it would definitely impact Iraq and Afghanistan, which they brought their terrorist puppet and just put it in the middle of the country and then run away. Excuse me. They are terrorists, and even they've been recognizing it as a state, which is just disgusting and sickening in this modern century we live in, with all that showing off with technology and so on. So this is the situation. It is quite urgent, and I urge you to do whatsoever you can to mobilize more and more in every layers, in every single details in the society, abroad, wherever you come from. Just spread their voice. Let's amplify this movement's voice, which is an important thing, and we urgently need it, because the massacre is happening under the surface of that government, with all the scenario they make in their media to just, force confession of the families of the prisoners and whoever who've been killed in the movement and protesters. So we've seen more than enough from the Islamic regime. So this is why people are fed up with it, and clearly and bravely in the street, and we have to echo their voice, and we have to echo and amplify their voice more than we've been doing it. I don't want to go in details. I prefer to hear questions and see how we can go through the details and more discussion from the people in the room. Thank you very much.